Hi everyone, happy work week 2. Wanted to do a quick recap for week 1 and then also just introduce week 2. Thank you guys so much for all the creative ways that you talked about your discussion and highlighted it with slides and different ways that you presented it. It was really neat to read, and there's a lot of common themes among all the groups, which was interesting to read about too. So I just wrote down a few things I wanted to touch on, and then we'll introduce week 2. So first, for the majority of the groups, you had a lot of similar themes because you're all child life specialists or going into child life. There was a lot of themes around helping others, around your passion for working with children and families, the value of education, that you're driven. So those were all very similar things. And you talked a lot about finding strong similarities despite your different backgrounds, which is one of the big highlights of this assignment, is being able to recognize that you can find similarities within a lot of differences. You also talked a lot about using an assignment like this to be able to highlight how to avoid the single story. So how to look at things as a whole on all the different things that influence a person or a family, and how that can help to avoid the single story that we talked about last week. Some of your aha moments were about the fact that you have so many outside influences and that there's so many different things that influence what makes you who you are. And there was a little bit of discussion on questions of, is there one major turning point or one major thing that happens that maybe steers you into the field you're in or into who you become, or is it more than one thing? Is it a number of things? That was a really good question that we can discuss further through this class. Another aha moment was about your unspoken beliefs and how for you that is your normal, and the need to remember that that's not the same for everybody. And that's a really important point as well, because you're working with families that are from all different backgrounds. Being able to recognize that what is your normal and what your belief system is not necessarily the same as another person. So that's very important. You also talked a lot about your privilege and the ability to sacrifice to achieve the goals. So being able to recognize the privilege that you do have, for some of you, that you can go back to school, that you can sacrifice things in order to pursue the career you want. And that's also a great point to recognize. Also, one of the moments was about the struggles and how they become part of who we are and add to our story. And I think that that's true for everyone, despite what your actual struggles are. Some can be medically related, illness related. Others could be something to do with family dynamics, moving, divorce, loss, things like that. And those types of struggles that you experience and how they add to who you are as a person. There was also a talk about, despite all our differences, that you're all have chosen the field of child life, and what does that kind of say about the type of person that each of you are? Was there a defining moment that just made you get into this field? Was it a number of things? And I think this is something that's really important to reflect on. And I think that for some people, you may not actually recognize what got you into this field or what got you into pursuing something with families until certain moments. I know for myself that I had some things as a child. My dad was in the medical field, and I had a brother with a disability. And it took me into my 20s to recognize how much my brother's disability impacted me as his sibling and as a person. And it was not until I wrote my essay to get into graduate school that I recognized that that was something that really influenced me into getting into working with families and children, but those that were in hospitals and that had illnesses and disabilities, and it was a really defining moment for me to recognize what actually kind of influenced me to want to do that. And so sometimes it comes out early and other times I think that as you grow in your career and as a student, you recognize different aspects that also influence your decisions and certain things. The other thing that, going back to finding similarities despite the differences you have, this is why an activity like this could be very, very beneficial when you're working with children and families, to be able to bring out, you know, their backgrounds, their influences, get to know them on a different level, especially if you're working with them long term. You know, what's beyond their illness, as we as child specialists always want to focus on them as a whole person, and recognize that they have a life outside of the hospital and outside of what they're going through. So this is a kind of great way to start to get to know them on that type of level. I also have found this activity to be very beneficial to do with staff. That wasn't mentioned in your group work, but it's something to think about, the fact that everyone you work with also has a different background, have things that influence them. So sometimes if you may not understand, you know, where they're coming from on a certain level, or why they do certain things, it's also something that we've done before in like psychosocial rounds or as an activity with staff, to get to recognize, you know, what everyone else brings to the job. And so that's something I wanted to point out. And I also just think, when you're working with families, getting to know them on this level also can help build rapport, because as everyone is very different, and you're going to have so many differences amongst who you're working with, within that you can find kind of similarities to base things off of, which is really important. So that, I just wanted to highlight a few of those things, and say thank you again for the creative ways that you guys presented this in your discussions. You guys put a lot of hard work into your slides and into the discussions, and I really appreciate that. As far as your reflections, I'm working on them now. I will be commenting on them for you, so I'm going to hopefully have that done in the next couple days. Just like it was a short work week for you, same with me, so I'm still trying to catch up on making sure I can comment on every one of those reflections. So I will be doing that in the next couple days. As far as this week, everything is up for your group work and for your pairs. So you just look at the community. If you have questions, shoot it out there and I'll respond. But it's pretty straightforward with what we're doing this week. As far as priorities for reading, the video for the Brofenbrenner video, I know that you guys have done this theory before, but just kind of recapping and refreshing on how to create your own circles for this, because that's your activity. So if you need to have a refresher, that's there for you to kind of watch through and then do your own circles for that. As I said before, The Immortal Life of Henrietta Lacks is always going to be a priority reading. So that's something to stay on top of, because your first group assignment involves that book. So keep reading that for this week. And then I would say chapter 2 for Understanding Families would come next, and then the article on family-centered care. So that's kind of my priority for this week as far as that. Again, if you have questions about the assignments, the activities, discussions, feel free to email me or put it on the community and I will respond to you. So thank you for watching this. Please +1 it after you have seen it, and I hope you guys have a great start to your week. Bye.